What's up, y'all? Will here at Schedulefly. This episode is with Peter Waters of Tiaco in Boulder, Colorado. And this is a must-listen episode. Peter's a great dude. He's been a customer for a while. I did not know him until just a couple of months ago. When I was out in Boulder, we got together and had coffee one day. I thought it'd be for 20, 30 minutes. We hung out for like 2 hours and got to know each other. Talked about life, talked about business, talked about books, talked about podcasts, and just a phenomenal dude. So I was really thrilled that when I was out there this week, he was available to hang out and talk about some of that stuff and a lot of other stuff for a podcast episode. Peter's a very open guy. He's very transparent. He'll talk about anything. He'll share anything. He talked about being sober for 10 years and why he made that choice. So when somebody's this willing to just, not hold anything back and share and be honest and authentic, it makes for the best podcast episodes. It makes for the best friendships and relationships. So I know Peter's going to be a good friend for a long time, and I'm thankful for that. So before we get into this episode, a couple of quick things. First, I want to tell you about Pop Menu, our sponsor. They're a new partner with us at Schedulefly, and we have a lot of very happy mutual customers. Pop Menu is all about making your day easier and your sales bigger. They'll simplify your marketing operations, bring in more guests, capture customer data for personalized remarketing to keep them coming back. With one super simple to use platform that integrates with most point of sales like Toast and Square and a lot of others, Pop Menu starts with a beautifully designed, easy to update, interactive menu that transforms the guest experience online. It includes a brand new website that's optimized for search engines like Google for no additional cost, automated digital marketing, online ordering and waitlisting, and you'll never miss another call with their AI answering solution that costs as little as 47 cents an hour. They've answered over 1 million phone calls with this for their customers in a very short period of time. So very cool. And there's just so much more under the hood. So there's a link to Pop Menu in the show notes. That's what they like me to read. I like to just share that we have a lot of mutual customers, and those mutual customers are happy. I've spoken to a lot of those folks. They say the product's great, the customer service is great, and the results are great. So check out Pop Menu. I also want to throw in a special note for Arrived, Arrived. Arrived is a point-of-sale company. They're out of Boulder. We've gotten to know them. Great group of people. They serve what they would say are beverage-forward establishments. Breweries, tons of breweries. Lots of breweries use Arrived. Distilleries in places like Tiaco. And I forgot to talk to Peter about Arrived, and I wish I hadn't, but maybe we'll do it another time. They serve a lot of margaritas there. It is taqueria. And so Arrived is their point of sale. And I got to spend some time with Lauren Bendel, the CEO at Arrived, while I was out there this week. And two of his teammates, Rachel and John, phenomenal group of people doing things the right way. And I just want to throw in a little special plug for Arrived, Arrived. If you would consider yourself a beverage-forward place like that, check them out. All right. Here we go with Peter Waters, Tiaco, Boulder, Colorado. Yeah, there we go. We're live. Finally. Nice. All right. What's up, y'all? Will here at Schedulefly. I'm at Tiaco in Boulder, hanging out with my friend Peter. Peter, introduce yourself.
This is Peter Waters with Tiaco Restaurant in downtown Boulder. Kind of did it all for me there, Will.
11 years, huh?
11 years in May, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The last few, I think we want to count double, but yeah. So if you want to give us credit for 15, we're not going to complain.
We could do that. I think that's fair. So
15th anniversary.
All right, man. Like I told you, I never come in with a list of questions. I don't have anything. The only thing I ask everybody is, how did you get started in hospitality? I always like everybody's origin story because I'm always fascinated with what happened.
For me, I grew up on the East Coast, went to college back east, and right after graduating from Lafayette College, I moved to Aspen to do my mental sabbatical, as they say. Yeah.
Mental sabbatical in Aspen. Out there bartending and skiing?
Postgraduate year degree in Aspen, Colorado. And kind of stumbled into my first restaurant job there.
When was this?
This would have been 98,
okay.
Winter of 98. So I graduated in 97, winter of 98, and we... ironically, it was a Mexican restaurant. I've worked in 2 restaurants my entire life, and both of them Mexican restaurants. And so for me, it was just a ski bum year.
Yeah.
Instructed skiing, worked as a bartender server at a place called La Piñata, which is no longer around at the base of Snowmass. And then after about a year and a half in Aspen, I moved down to Denver, took on more of a corporate responsibility with my career path. And fast forward, like 15 years maybe, to 2012, I was just so over it, man. Like the grind, everything about it. I kind of found my way into the tech world for about a decade, and used to tell people that the job was great. It helped me pay my bills. It kept the lights on. And when I woke up one morning and decided I'd rather live in the dark than do that for one more day, friends of mine had a few restaurants and they were expanding into Boulder. And I walked into this place called Tiaco to help them set up and started putting together chairs and tables. And that was, like I said, about 11 years ago. It was April 2012. And there was something about it. I walked in the door and it just felt right. And probably about 6 months in, they were great enough to bring me on as a partner. They were having some growing pains with their other establishments and wanted somebody that they could kind of offload this establishment to in terms of operations. And it was an amazing opportunity for me. And fast forward to a couple months ago, and with the shrinking in this industry and the challenges we were facing, there was kind of no longer space for an investor group and an operator owner. And I was able to very politely purchase these guys shares from them, and we had a very cordial finish to a very, very amazing career together, and here we stand. So yeah, we've managed to get this far, and not without its hiccups and headaches, and but to be honest, man, I can't imagine doing anything else, and I'm incredibly grateful for having found this sooner than later in my life.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
On being able to purchase it. Okay, so this is why I always ask that question first, because you just gave me like 25 questions to ask. So
No.
I'm going to start. Well, first I'll say this. So you graduated college in 97. I graduated in 96.
Okay.
And here we sit, and the funniest thing about this is I didn't have the balls to do what you did. Like I got out of college, and my options were I had gotten an offer for a job at Nations Bank. I live in Charlotte, and banking town. But I wanted to come out here. I wanted to go to Utah, and I wanted to be a ski instructor and a bartender. And I wussed out. I like, it's totally like the path like that, And I mean, I wouldn't change anything because here I sit with you right now, and I have a wonderful family and great business. But my son was asking me about that recently. He, I was telling him that story. He's like, well, what if I'm in that situation? I'm like, go out west, like, and go do that, because when you're young, you can do that, and the longer you get in life, the harder it is to But when you're young, you've got so much time, ahead of you, and I really, really, really wanted to do that, but I was like, man, I need to do the responsible thing, and like all my buddies they were going into like investment banking or going off to medical school or law school or business school, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be the guy that's like the ski bum, like, and I wussed out, man. I really did. So you go out to Aspen. First of all, I had never been to Aspen until I was skied there with Dave like a month ago or whatever. Wow, that place is. I know it's got to have changed a lot since you were there. I feel like everywhere I looked, that's high end, man.
Yeah.
Like
the
there's a lot of
are pushing
it's
out
like
the millionaires.
Exactly. It's
and
like
those guys,
the elite
days
of
are
the
numbered.
elite. I mean, good grief.
Yeah, the 1% of the 1%ers are up there.
Really,
Yeah.
legit, no doubt about it.
And yeah, for me, it was when I was there, and not to say in my day, but it used to be. I knew it as a ski town that loved to party, and now it's kind of a party town that occasionally skis, which is.
As long as there's an Instagram shot for like, it's like, as long as there's a good place for a selfie.
Yeah, and to be fair, I haven't been up there in probably 5 years unintentionally between COVID and such. But it's funny, you walk back in, and whether it's an elementary school or a town you grew up in or something, and you still see the great parts of it, despite what may have changed on the surface. I go in there and I see the mountains. I see couple restaurants that are still around 20 years later, and I still see friends that are around 20 years later. And like, for me, that brings me back to like the perfect spot in my life where I had zero responsibilities. I mean, you could go out, make $250, which was a really good night in 1998, and
Heck yeah.
still be done by 10:30, have the entire night in front of you, and be lucky if you could afford breakfast the next morning. And and when I lived there, the slowest amongst the locals, the slowest 4 nights of the month were not a Monday or a Wednesday or a Sunday. It was the last 4. And that was when everybody hoarded their cash, paid their bills, and on the second, you could guarantee that no matter what day of the week it was, you were going to see all those people again.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Financial responsibility, I suppose. Yeah. First lesson.
It hits you hard when, yeah, it does. Well, okay. So when you're out there and you're at this taco place, I mean, what about, and you've taken a break, so you were in software world for a while, but what about it grabbed you?
Back then or now or both?
I mean, there was something about it that must have stuck.
You know, back then it was sort of a very pleasant means to an end. It was a great way to spend my days. My schedule was roughly 3 o'clock to 10:30, which meant you had your days free to ski and weren't stuck in a bar till 3 in the morning. And and like I said, was making good enough cash that you could really enjoy yourself. And it was something that was so natural to me that just people call it a working vacation, right? You're not even living at that point. You're literally on vacation for a year and a half. So that for me was just easy. It was easy. And when you're good at something, you love doing it. But that didn't dawn on me until fast forward 20 years. And this has been a totally different experience to like be in a town where you've started to establish roots. And for me, it was funny. We opened this place 11 years ago, and prior to that, I thought I knew everyone in town, and it turns out I just knew the people who went out after 5 o'clock. And then you open up a restaurant that serves lunch and dinner, and I met all these amazing community members that come in for lunch or maybe an early happy hour. I mean, like I said, I had the evening and weekend crowd on lockdown from a social perspective prior to this, but there was thousands upon thousands of people that really truly inspire you to want to do better. And something we tell our staff when we go through the hiring process is like, hey guys, everyone in here is here because they're done with their job. Whether it's lunch break, whether it's an evening, whether it's a weekend, they went to whatever they do for a living. And then when they were told that they could go home or take a break, they came here to hang out at your job. Like, nobody's lining up 2,000 people a week to go hang out with their accountant or hang out with a tech company, or like, despite how enjoyable some of those lounges are, like, it's just not happening. And so for us, I think it's like the absolute gift to have a job that other people want to voluntarily hang out with you at work when they're not required to be at their place of employment. So
when you mentioned when you're hiring, are y'all always hiring?
We're pretty fortunate. We go through like seasonal hiring spurts to account for the uptick. Our business is up anywhere from, it's been a little wonky the last few years, but summer you can account for at least a 50% increase from our busiest month from our slowest month. So that obviously comes with a demand for hiring more staff. But March 15th, which is a couple days away, 3 years ago, when COVID came down on us, we had a very real conversation with our staff. We have this expression around here that you take care of the restaurant and the restaurant will take care of you. And that's the circle of life in our existence here at Tiaco. And when COVID hit and they told us we had to go to go only, it was terrifying. We had we didn't have a to-go program necessarily. We didn't have any of the infrastructure set up. Our tacos don't travel that well. So overnight we decided to sell burritos because they have much greater shelf length, and we decided we weren't going to let anybody go. We looked around and a lot of restaurants were pumping the brakes, figuring it out, and we kind of made this decision that we'd rather see this thing crash and burn than kick people off the plane, one at a time. And we were really, really, really lucky that we have a small, flexible space. I mean, we have the world's largest tiny restaurant. Is kind of how we look at it.
Yeah. How many? I mean, how many people do you see?
Yeah, we're sitting here right now in our bar area, and we've got 30 bar stools between high tops, community table, and bar stools, and bar seats, I should say. And then adjacent to that, with not much separation, is 30 dining room seats. So inside is 60. Outside, we have another 45 that we've always had, and then we just added about another 45 when they expanded street parking spots to be converted into outdoor dining post-COVID. Okay. So that's something they gave us to get us through, and now it's a permanent addition. So to answer your original question, we managed to keep every single employee that we had as we went through COVID, and it helped that we were in winter mode and we weren't employing our summer staff. But as a result, we haven't had the problems that some other restaurants are experiencing in terms of restaffing. And you hear people talk about, hey, I can't get my employees to come back to work. I'm like, well, if you let them go, they're not necessarily still your employees. Like, that's the challenge. And I understand, like, trust me, it's...
God, that must have been a scary... Like, how do you... You're just rolling the dice, like, trying to figure out what to do. Nobody, I mean, just...
And we were so lucky that, unbeknownst to us, we had PPP money coming down the pipe that they hadn't announced yet. And so we were trying our best, and we ran some numbers, and we're like, okay, if we can get to this number, that's our break even. And if we can do it, and we shaved back everybody's shifts by about 20%. So if you were at 5, you went to 4, basically. But we knew that, like, everybody had to make enough money to pay their bills, and and we had a couple people that voluntarily said, hey, I'm a student, my parents want me home, and so there was some people that and our younger staff, younger support roles, hostesses, things like that, that weren't relying on this job, it was just extra cash while they were at school. Those people kind of retreated into their home, wherever that was, locally or away, but not a single person had to worry about making their bills. That was kind of our commitment to these guys. So, and you just figure it out, man. Day 1, it was to-go food. Day 2, they announced you could do liquor, and our sales doubled overnight. I mean, literally 50% of our sales.
You guys were allowed to send liquor home, huh?
Yeah, we were allowed to sell our famous margaritas in 1-liter containers. I think we got as high as a 3-gallon container at one point. It was like something out of a Simpsons episode. Yeah. It's like the world's largest Slurpee, swimming around in the bucket when it's done.
What's his name? Barney, the guy that...
He would have been our spokesperson. So yeah, we were really, really, really lucky. Like I said, we had the flexibility to shift our menu overnight, and we're not a fine dining establishment. I mean, if I was sitting on a steakhouse establishment that sold $250 per head tickets, like, we'd be screwed. I mean, all the cheesesteaks in the world aren't going to save your business at that point. Yeah. And you can't pack that stuff up and send it out the door at $150 a head in a cardboard compostable container. Like, that just doesn't work. So yeah, we were, like I said, really, really fortunate.
What do you want Tiaco to be known for in Boulder? What do you think it's known for? When people like, hey, let me tell you about Tiaco.
For sure, our people. I mean, I'm lucky that I get to be the face of this place, and as a result, I get showered with compliments. But at the end of the day, the only thing I do well here is hire good people. Yeah, that's it. Everything else. Excuse me.
You good? You getting choked up talking about your team?
I am getting choked up. I guess we're not going to be known for our water. Choking on here. But that is truly the one thing that I feel like I do really well here is attract good talent. And then these guys definitely take it from there. And these guys are honestly some of the most amazing people you're going to get to know in this town. And after my home life, this is it. This is work. This is social. This is everything I get to do when I'm not traveling. This is where I woke up one morning years ago, and I'm lying in my bed, and my iPhone told me that I was 4 blocks away from my home. Would you like directions? And I spent more time at Tiaco than I did at my house that the algorithm assumed that I was working the night shift at my home address, and that this was actually, the restaurant was my home. And I was like, God damn it, fuck you, Steve Jobs. So for the amount of time we put in here, I would say that it's our people that we're most known for, and the fact that we try our hardest to put out the greatest amount of hospitality per dollar. You can go to some pretty amazing restaurants in this town, and you're spending hundreds of dollars per head. You expect to have your fork replaced before it even hits the ground. But to teach a staff that we can have that same impact at $20 a check average per person is pretty awesome. We have all the tools in the world we need to do that, from our food to our drink to just the space and the vibe. So, yeah.
Who have you learned from over the years?
Dave Query.
Okay, well,
it's DQ University.
DQ University.
It's funny because I had no idea what I was even picking up. So I was a bar fly at a number of his restaurants and bars for years. I actually met Dave when I was volunteering coaching a youth lacrosse program in town, and he came up.
Oh, you coached Matt, right?
I coached Matt, his oldest, and Monster Matt.
Monster Matt.
And this dad comes up and he's like, "Hey man, if you want to do a end of the year or end of the season party, I can make that happen over at Centro." And I was like, "Sure, man. Like, I'm sure I could make a reservation too." I had no idea who this guy was, and he's being so humble. And he was like, "Well, just let me know." And I was like, "All right, guy. Like, I've got a cell phone. I'm sure I can look up the number." And unbeknownst to me, it was his restaurant, and one of the other parents were like, "So Dave offered to throw a party at his restaurant." And I'm like, wait a minute, and started connecting the dots, and he's been a good buddy ever since. And I got to do some work with him when I was working for Avaya, and we put phone systems into a restaurant or two of his. But and I always thought that was such an honor to get the opportunity to even help him out a little bit, just seeing everything that he does, and if our technology could help their restaurant run a little smoother back then. I was like, God, it was just to be that close to somebody who has done so much for the town was pretty awesome. Yeah. When we opened this place up, you sit back and you're like, okay, what do we need to do to make this successful? And immediately I was like, you know what, we're never going to serve fish the way he does at Jack's, or burgers the way he does at the West End, or any of his other concepts, fried chicken, etc. But that doesn't mean that we can't learn from everything that those guys do. Yeah. And it was all, how do I feel when I'm in anyone's establishment, but primarily his? And you just kind of reverse engineer that experience. And it all came down to, like, every single time it was, his staff is so great and they got to know us so well, and his give back to the community just puts a bow on that amazing package. So, yeah. So he was a big unknowing influence in kind of the way we create things and how we want things to be done. It's just like, hey, when we walk into Jack's, what do we expect? Let's have that same expectation. Let's meet that expectation before people even set it for themselves here. So, yeah.
You already answered this, but one of the things I'm always curious about with anybody I meet that owns a business is, what is your biggest strength, and do you lean into that and rely on others to fill the gaps where you don't have strength, or do you try to, grow and learn other? And I ask that, like, I'm not organized, but I'm okay with that. Like, that's not my thing. That's not my thing. Like, I'm okay with that. I used to try to get organized. I'm like, I'm just not gonna, like, it's a waste. I'd rather lean into what I'm good at.
Sure.
Is that how you roll?
Yeah, this has been such an experiment since day one, and I try to take things that I've become so stagnant in my previous career that I was like, okay, how do I catapult myself up? Whatever I do next, I got some catching up to do, because I just kind of burnt out the last 5 to 7 years of my life, just kind of lather, rinse, repeat. And so I wanted to say, like, hey, and anything I could grab from anybody around here, friends of mine that were doing interesting work. A good friend of mine by the name of Dana Dupuy, she shared with me this self-evaluation that had 5 strengths. They're all 5 characteristics, and I won't be able to recall all of them, but it was stuff like creativity, accountability, organization, and creativeness. And I said that already. So, like I said, not going to be able to remember all of them. And so the whole point was that you're supposed to rank. It's a forced ranking, meaning you have to put a 1 next to one of them and a 5 next to another. You can't say I'm great at all of these. You have to rank them in order of what's best suits you. And so what we would then do was evaluate people as candidates and say, okay, our current staff, we have a lot of people who rank themselves high in creativity and a lot of people who rank themselves low in accountability. So let's look for somebody who ranks themselves higher in accountability and get some balance, right? Like, to your point, like if I consider myself to be, highly creative, then immediately I know that I don't need creative people around me as a priority. I need people who can make up for my weakness, for my 5s. And it's also great to see somebody walking in for a job interview at a restaurant, thinks they're going to ask them about a customer experience, and you drop this bomb in front of them just to see. We had a girl who I thought to God we were going to be cleaning her brains up off the walls. Her head looked like it was about to explode. And I was like, told her not to. I was like, don't overthink it. She's like, don't overthink it, don't overthink it, don't overthink it. And I was like, okay, maybe give it a little more thought than that because we need to get out of here at some point. But and so, part of that is just being able to throw a curveball at people, see how they respond to a written exam they didn't know they were going to get that afternoon. The other part is to get some balance. And so I thought I was a fucking genius. I'm like, I'm going to redesign this restaurant world. And 6 months later, we have our staff in place. And I think I've done this incredible balancing act. And everybody, along with myself, has birthdays in August. And all I did was hire unintentionally a bunch of Leos that about this thing.
Way. Are you serious?
I don't believe in that stuff necessarily. But this was, I was like, God damn it.
But nevertheless.
And I ripped up the sheet of paper. We never asked the question again. Now I just ask people when they're born. And we go
just get one from each month.
Yeah. Seems to have the same results. So for me, I definitely try and find people that balance me out. But more than anything, I look at somebody and I'm like, is this the kind of person I want to see walking to my table? Because we can fix the rest. Like, you can help people with systems to be a little more organized. It's not one of my strengths either, but I know that there are ways to overcome that, right? At the end of the day, it's like, is this person going to be the kind of person, if I walk into a strange restaurant, that I'm going to be stoked to see?
Well, when we got these chips, so this is his first day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not even his first training session. So it's not even his first day.
So you were like, hey man, put the chips on the. But what I saw was you said this is Will, and he looked me in the eye and shook my hand.
Yep.
That's.
Can't teach that.
You can teach put the plate there, but that that
Serve
impression
from the left, clear from the right.
Immediately, I'm like, wow, okay, and I thought he was probably one of your tenured managers, and you said it's his first. I'm like, what? That means that's a great. Most likely, because that was his natural reaction. He just looked me in the eyes and shook my hand. Like, who does that now? Other than guys like our age, not people half our age.
I'm not even that consistent with it.
Well, okay, so something you did, and this is the kind of thing I think is just so meaningful. You sent me. You and I met for the first time a month or two ago when I was here, and we had coffee, and we talked about podcast and books and all this stuff. And the next thing I know, there's 2 books that you've sent
to the wrong address.
To the wrong address. They went, well, it's because it's our address on our. We don't have an office. That's Tyler's house. So.
Okay. So you did get
hey,
the
man,
books.
I finally got them. I haven't read them yet because I just got them. I saw Tyler a week or two ago. But there's a. I think about this more and more lately. There's a, and we may have even talked about this. Did we talk about the parable of the starfish?
I don't think so.
Okay. I love this story so much because I think it's so relevant to what you do and what great people in hospitality do. So there's a dude walking down the beach, and he sees this young girl, and the tide has gone out, or it's going out. And there's miles of starfish, that are up on the beach. And so she's picking them up, and he sees her, she's tossing them back into the ocean. He's like, hey, young lady, I see you tossing starfish back in. Why are you doing that? And she's like, well, because if I don't, they're going to dry up and die here on the beach. So I'm tossing them back in so they have, a chance to continue living. He's like, well, that's cool, but there's miles in front of us as far as you can see, and there's thousands of starfish. Like, you're never going to really make a difference. She looks them, she picks a starfish up, she tosses it back in the ocean. She goes, I made a difference to that one.
Yeah.
And I love that story so much, because it can be overwhelming to think about, like, how many customers that come in, and, like, being able to provide some great experience, and you can't win them all, you can't provide but, like, if every interaction is like this tossing starfish, like every single time, you make a big difference to each one. And then when you make a difference to one, they go tell other people. And that really, like, impressed me that you did that. That means that, like, you were engaged in our conversation. And so I feel like that just says a lot, for whether that's a natural inclination you have or whether that's something you've learned. Like, that tells me, like, this guy gets it. If you're doing things like that, that's like a heuristic, like a rule of thumb, where I'm like, okay, just doing that, I guarantee you he knows how to run a restaurant really well. No doubt about it, he's really good at what he does in hospitality.
Or a bookstore.
Seriously, man, like, it's those extra little things. That's what DQ does. Like, it's these little things that you do it over and over and over, and each one itself may not move the needle, but the collective starfish you've thrown back over time, it starts to compound, and then you build this personal brand in your town, like DQ has.
For sure.
Like, everybody you talk to is like, says something great about him, and it's because he's been throwing starfish in for 30 years or whatever.
Yeah. At least, it's funny, because I always thought that was the intention of Amazon, right? Was to make it easy for people to connect. And I know they started off as an online bookstore, but I love how easy it is to just click a few buttons, and once you have someone's address, forget about it, man. It's like, every time I go to see my in-laws, I'm like, boom, I can easily send something off that resonated with me on that trip or something like that. And once that address is put in there, it's just clicking a few buttons. Whereas before, it was, 20 years ago, you would have had to go on great lengths, and that was a real statement, right?
But see, you're using this tool, like, you see that as just this tool that makes it easier to do that kind of stuff, but a lot of people don't even see that you should do that kind of stuff, you see? Like, that's the difference, man. Like, that's what you get, and what, people that are, I think, successful in this business get is, like, just, you have like a natural inclination to engage with people and want to make their day better. And it's a common thread I see across, all the people I talk to that are really good at hospitality. It's also hard I think that is hard to train. I think it's hard. You have to get people that think that way, like this guy here or whatever. Like, not easy to find people like that. No,
funny, because one of my least favorite things to do growing up was write thank you cards. Like, I almost wanted to just be like, hey, can I send the cash back?
My mom made me do it all the time. I couldn't stand it.
It was the worst. And I'm like, first communion, I was like, oh, is there any way I can just give them their $50 back and not have to write the letter? That was, is that an option? It's probably why I waited so long to get married. But it's, for me, the sentiment, I guess, was always there, to your point. But finding a technology like Amazon that can make it so easy to, I would have never sat down and wrote you a thank you note just saying, hey, man, it was great to see you. Really appreciate your time. But, like, when I can just type it into the note on the package that's going out from Amazon, it's real easy.
So I'm trying. I know you sent Let My People Go Surfing, Yvonne. What other book did you send?
And then Never Split the Difference, the negotiation book.
The negotiation book, because we talked about that.
A little too close to home, but a little too late for you guys.
I can't. Well, that's all right. We had to split the difference on that one. But that could have come in. That could have come in handy.
Sorry, a year too late.
Yeah, that's all right. Oh, thanks a lot, man.
Be careful what I send you next.
What good's it going to do me now?
Show you what's coming down the pipe.
You're going to send me a book about what happens if all your customers get shut down because of a virus that's in. Man.
Planet of the Apes would have been a worse foreshadowing, I suppose. But two great books. Yvonne's from Patagonia, his culture book. It's so awesome, man. You want to feel good about you are feeling good about yourself. Read that book, It will put you in your place.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much we can all be doing better, and I think that's just a great reminder. But he's so humble in the way he presents that, just saying, hey, man, just figure out what a couple percentage points change in your life looks like. I'm not asking you to go live in a tent by a creek surrounded by not a single piece of plastic. But, they're reasonable and they're understanding, and they understand that if you can build a brand, too, if you can build a business, you then also have power, right? And so I think that was really impactful, was like, hey, he did things right, but he didn't let it get in the way of his success ever, because he knew that the bigger the brand, the more impactful he would be down the road. So he didn't make decisions that would hinder the growth of the business, because he knew how powerful he could be with that size business that he's built to this day. So,
do you read a lot still?
I'm on the audiobook kick,
okay.
and I do about 50 a year right now. So I'm averaging about one a week. I've got an awesome dog that I take out for a hike every morning for about an hour and a half plus
a lot
car
of
ride.
Yeah.
So I hit it at 1.5 speed unless I'm listening to.
Right. I remember you told me that. Yeah.
Matthew McConaughey is the only book I couldn't read at that speed. He sounded like one of the chipmunks. And, I mean, he's so fast.
Green Lights, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Green Lights. Yeah. And so, it's been.
That's so funny.
It's been. It's
so
been
you
great
can you can consume it because you can consume content faster than people typically talk.
I think they just talk slow.
Yeah.
And you kind of train your ear. You start at 1.15, 1.25, and some people I'll peel it back a little bit, but especially the ones that are just like pure enjoyment. Most people
mostly nonfiction, like business books, or
I do. My rule of thumb is usually for every 4 insightful books, I'll listen to something like a Matthew Perry biography or a yearbook by Seth Rogen's phenomenal.
Matthew Perry's biography. You listen to that?
Yeah, it's a trip.
How is he doing? Is he okay now? I mean, he had some rough years, didn't he?
He did, and that was kind of the point of his book. But by the end of his narration, you wonder where he actually landed in his sobriety. But
really,
it's just because he's so all over. His whole life was all over the place, and his whole life was kind of how well he could hide it and things like that. And you kind of wonder, you're like, oh, is this just not another chapter at this point?
Right.
It's hard, man. And I told you this is, I think, I just had 10 years sobriety in January.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
About 6 months after we opened the restaurant, I stopped drinking and decided that if one person in this ship is going to be sober, it should be the guy with his hands on the steering wheel. And so it's great to hear people's stories, especially their success stories. But it was still quite entertaining. Yeah.
That's been a big issue in this industry, obviously. I mean, for, all kinds of reasons, but, substance abuse issues. And it used to be this, like, work hard, play hard, and everybody,
Totally.
And that's changing a lot. You still have to, but it led to a lot of, like a sense of family. Like, you work hard together, you play hard together, and everybody's kind of bonded. How do you create that same kind of bonding without having that sort of full speed ahead mentality in a restaurant?
I think at the end of the day, I think everybody's appreciative for the designated driver if you're taking them to the next party.
Yeah.
So for me here, I think my staff is all very responsible. Everybody we hire is the number one priority is they have to be able to self-manage.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're not that kind of organization where you're going to hear from me from above. Kind of have this shoulder-to-shoulder mentality where I'm like, hey, I look left and look right. I want to be able to see all my employees. I don't want to have anybody have to look forward and back to locate somebody. Everybody should be at the same kind of level. So for me, I think they definitely appreciate that somebody's willing to get up at 5 a.m. and make sure all the bills are paid and the things that they shouldn't have to worry about, so that when they come in here, they can just do their job, which at the end of the day is making sure guests leave happier than when they arrived. That's it.
Are you familiar with Ben's Friends?
No.
It'd be cool to check out. I don't know if there's a chapter around here. It started out of Charleston, but a couple of restaurant guys, a guy named Steve Palmer. He's got Indigo Road is his group. They've probably got over 30 restaurants around the Southeast now. But he wrote a book called Saying Grace, and he talks about how the restaurant industry saved him twice. Once when he was young and, like troublemaker and all this kind of stuff, and he started working in restaurants, and then he, had a substance abuse issue, and he was homeless on the streets of Atlanta and kicked it and got back into restaurants. Now he's got this empire. But he and some guys started this organization called Ben's Friends, I don't know, like 8 or 10 years ago. And it was just him and some of the other guys that, he had been in the industry with a long time that were all, however many years sober, and wanted to provide a resource for people that had substance abuse issues that wanted to find tools to help them with sobriety. And so they started this group because they lost a friend, an industry friend named Ben.
Got it.
So they call it Ben's Friends, and they open chapters like all over the country. And it's thriving. It's freaking awesome. It's really cool.
So when I stopped, I had a really close friend who was one of the original partners here, and she pulled me aside and was just like, "Hey man, what are you doing? What are you doing?" And she was like, I couldn't sleep the last 2 nights trying to figure out how I was going to bring this up to you. And that was the moment for me that was like, aha, right? Holy cow. I always figured there'll be some reason more pressing than working in a restaurant for me to get sober at some point. And I knew it was in my destiny. That was never a question. I just didn't know what it was going to be. And as soon as I realized that my behavior was having a negative impact on somebody else to that level, it was enough for me to just say, okay, great. I thought I was just being selfish. I thought I was abusing my own body. I thought I was just beating myself up, and I was the one who was going to always take the fall for that. To see somebody else be negatively impacted, and was just like, God, I can't live with myself if I'm creating a scenario where somebody else can't sleep at night. So thankfully they were great enough to make sure that my spot here in the restaurant still existed after a 30-day break where I got to just really get my head screwed on straight. And during that time, I put together a toolbox. It was just like, hey man, I need this is what I need to get through every day. And it was my family, my close friends. I used to be a big runner, and I decided to buy a road bike. I used to go to the gym, and I decided to take up jiu-jitsu. And it was just tweaking a little things that I would normally do. And the whole goal was if I can get, by the time I use up every one of these tools in my toolbox, if none of them worked for me that day, it should be time for bed. And that was kind of the goal, was to give myself enough tools that by the time I've exhausted all angles on how to, whether it's distract myself or just accomplish sobriety that day, it was that was it for me. And then I could go to bed, and AA was a big part of that the first 6 months. And it turned out to not be my tribe necessarily, but I will say I equate it to the Red Cross. And it's massive. It is somewhat of a one size tries to fit all because of its size and because of its reach, and I think that's a great thing. But they are there, man. You can find a meeting just about, you might have to travel a little bit, but there are meetings almost around the clock, especially if you live near a major city, and it's in your worst time of need, just like the Red Cross, they're there. And the fact that they do it totally unfunded, everyone chips in $1 or $2 to cover coffee for the next meeting. That's the only cash that's ever exchanged there. It's wild. And so what I loved about it was I got to show up, and I got to sit in the passenger seat for an hour at a time. I could be great, this might not be the most meaningful place for me right now, but I know that I can put the cruise control on and I can just kick it for a minute and not have to explain myself to anybody. I'm not at a sports bar watching a game, drinking water. I just could really turn it off, and I was surrounded by the most understanding people in the world because we were all in the same boat. And then you walk out of that place, even if it was a shitty meeting, you're still, the last thing you want to do is drink after being surrounded with that kind of support. So, and then for me, after that, it was, to your point about Ben's Friends, it was these aren't my people, right? And I had this realization that my life is this rope, and I needed to remove one piece of twine from that rope, from that braided intertwine. And a lot of people will say, you know what, screw it, man, it's too hard. I'm just going to cut the rope and I'll start over, which is fine. I loved everything else about my life except my drinking. And so I just had to figure out how to surgically remove that one little string inside this thick rope so that I could keep living my life. And I didn't want to be somebody who had to avoid places or couldn't be in a spot or in a situation. And that was really, really, really important to me. It's one of the reasons why I didn't want to go into a facility, because I was concerned that I would go into a vacuum, fix a problem, and then step out into like a meteor heading for the planet, right?
Yeah.
And have to deal with that whole mess. And I was like, I'd rather wake up in my bed and just figure out how to live my life so that I can get on with it as soon as possible. So I think that's great that there's an organization out there for people who are in the industry who don't either want to do anything else or don't know anything else. Because we all know this is an industry that has a relatively low barrier to entry, and there's a lot of opportunity once you're in it, but a lot of people will find themselves in this. The money's really good, especially to start off, and then they wake up one day and they're like, wait a minute, I'm not using my degree, I'm not doing what I was planning to do with my life, because the path of least resistance pulled me further than I wanted to. And so for a lot of people to have to overcome that while trying to get sober and have to deal with that it's a lot, man. And for me, it was the exact opposite. I finally found what I was good at, and it turned out, the irony was when I walked in here for the first time, I'm like, you're going to pay me to hang out in a bar all day? Right. I'm going to leave with more money than I started with? This is like incredible. And then you realize there's so much more at hand, and this wasn't a job. This was a career opportunity for me that I almost let slip away, sadly. But like I said, had some great people around me, and really, really supportive, and gave me a tremendous opportunity to do something really wonderful the last 11 years.
So how many partners did you have before that you were able to?
There was like 3 active partners, and then there was some friends and family investors that were on the side.
Okay.
That made up like partial shares, so to speak.
You don't have to get into the details. Like, how do you buy out partners in a restaurant? Like, you just come to a...
Yeah, we at the end of the year, we sat down, and we had kind of been dancing around this for a little bit, and it was just like, hey guys, like, short of it is the pie isn't nearly as big as it once was.
Yeah.
3 years ago, there was plenty to manage. Like, there was plenty to go around, and it got to the point where I was like, we're now at a point where, in order for me to take what I need, doesn't leave a lot for the rest of the group. Yeah. And that's not fair to them. And if you guys want to keep what you've been comfortable getting, then there's not enough room left for me to operate this at that rate. So they were great in understanding that. And some of them have other restaurants, so they really, really got it. Some of them have been out of the restaurant industry and understood that I was at a point where I'm kind of getting ready for the next stage of my life, and we couldn't keep this up. And if I wanted to do this till I retire, I needed to kind of put myself in a better financial situation. And the last 3 years was all about survival, and now we finally feel like we're past that, and it's like, okay, this definitely wasn't a conversation to be had a year and a half ago, right? We're just trying to keep the boat afloat, but thankfully we did a really good job managing all that, what we call the alphabet soup money, the acronyms, the ERTC, the PPP, the RRF, all that stuff. It's like, so that put us in a pretty good spot where we were able to come to an agreement where these guys were taken care of, and I was in a spot where I felt like now I can go back at this with 110%. And that was also the other part that's really challenging, when you're, even if somebody had 1% of your business, it's like once you're doing it all for yourself, you find that reserve that you never knew you had. And it's been not that I wasn't giving it 100% before, but it's like you just find this newfound.
Well, you've always got that there. Like it's not this is a bad thing, but it's always something I got to think about all these people and all, like what they're now you're just that's it. That's awesome, dude. Congratulations on that. I mean, that's
Thank you. Very
cool.
No, it's been great, and to have the support from these guys as we went through the process, and everybody to be so understanding, and it was awesome. And to see these guys around, and we gave out gift cards for life, so they know that they're never forgotten and want to just. It's so funny because you're right. Like whenever, even if it's 1%, it's always going to hang over you in some way, shape, or form. But I always try and remind myself of opportunity from the get-go. Right? Like it just doesn't. This place doesn't happen for them if I'm not here, and this place doesn't happen for me if they didn't get the ball rolling from the beginning. And so, to try and actually put a dollar value on that is really, really challenging. And, when you have people that kind of understand the situation, it was a real gift, man, to have people that were that understanding as we went through.
And dude, that's amazing, Peter. You went from being here just a short period and having a tough conversation with somebody that, lucky for you, cared enough to not sleep for a couple nights and have that. You took it seriously and took time off and figured it out. And then here, 10 years later, you're soul. That's awesome, dude.
It's good, and it's the irony is not lost on me that we pay our bills selling booze to other people, but it is nice that, and I don't know how many people in town actually know this, but the people who need to know it, I feel like understand it, that the guy who's running this place is sympathetic, and we've had a couple situations where I'm like, hey man, I can actually be the one to tell you this. Like, yes, it's going to come at a loss of revenue for our organization, but like I can tell you, this is not a good idea for you to be doing what you're doing on a regular basis. And feel free to go someplace else where somebody's not going to call you out on it. But I'll tell you right now, like your life's going to get a lot better when you start making some different decisions here. And it's not my place to tell anybody how to live their life one way or another, but I do feel fortunate to be in a situation where I can actually
it's
provide.
Nice to be able to empathize and be able to say, look, I've been there.
Yeah. And it's a hard thing for them to argue with when somebody has walked it already, and so we don't want to have that conversation with every one of our guests because that'll leave us broke on the street. But it is a nice thing to have in your pocket, and I think it was interesting when I stopped going to AA meetings because part of me felt a little bit like a fraud. I'm like, here I am walking out of this meeting and then turning around and selling booze to people that may or may, because it's hard to tell. Everybody's got their demons, and the person who comes in here for one drink, that might be the first of many as they crawl around town, and how much are you contributing to that demise. But at the same time, I also felt like I was meeting people where they were that needed the help. So I don't know.
Well, you said you got into jiu-jitsu. Do you still do that?
I got too busy. I have a lot of buddies that are still in the industry or still in the sport, and as long as I'm surrounding myself with them, I feel I don't need to know all the moves. So, but it was an amazing time to change everything about myself. Like I said, going to the gym and lifting up a weight versus going in there and actually maneuvering your body like a chess piece to manipulate somebody else in a sport is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really interested. I really need to just make it happen. I want to start. I hear so much about it. I hear Jocko talking about it on his podcast, and just the value, the lessons you learn, getting tapped out, and just getting back up, and I think there's a lot to take away from that sport.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
and
a lot of life lessons.
And it's not as vicious as some of the other hand-to-hand combat sports, right? It's all about a 60-pound kid can toss a 200-pound guy across the room if he knows what he's doing, which is humbling and fair at that same point. So, and there's a great guy in town here, Amal Easton, who has put together, God, I'm not even sure how many locations he's up to. I think it's double digits in the state of Colorado.
Oh, wow.
Dojos, and has really, really done great things for the sport and the community as a whole. So,
Okay, so you've got this place, you're hopping, you own the whole thing now, you're getting married this summer.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? What's next and if you think about the next 5 to 10 years with Tiaco?
Man, well, 4 years ago now, we opened up a little grilled cheese stand over on Pearl Street called Ruthie's, and it was a concept that was designed for a food hall, and food hall passed on it, and we had this thing concept in a box, and this walk-up kiosk of about 500 square feet. There's an identical one at the other end of the block that is used for an information booth, to give you a perspective. So can't even walk inside. It's all walk-up, kind of the way you would find it on a boardwalk on the New England coast up there. And so we opened that up. We've started to expand that into concession stands over the summertime. And it's just been a fun concept to expand. What's neat about it is that we can run it with 2 people. And the goal that I tasked, and we brought on my manager over there, Dan Scott, is now kind of the same path I had here. I brought him in as a partner and an owner over there. And day one, I just said, hey, man, you've got 45 seconds to create a 45-minute hospitality experience. Like, figure it out. And the reviews we get for our sandwiches are only trumped by the comments about how great the staff are there. So in terms of scale, that's kind of where I would put more of my effort, just because of the build out. It's designed to more easily open up new locations, and I mean, everything about it is a fraction of what takes place at Tiaco. And for this place here, to answer your original question, it's like we're finally coming out of this like darkness of 3 years, and it is challenging to see what's next. And I think a wait and see approach is not going to serve anyone very well. The writing's on the wall for a lot of cases. You want to get into the politics of this business. Minimum wages are a concern for everybody, right? And just costs from left to right. Minimum wage was something that had been forecasted, and we knew that when bills were passed, that over the course of the next 3 or 5 years, it would go up X number of dollars per year, and that you could forecast for, and then to get blindsided by a 20 to 75% increase in food costs, depending on the items, the last 2 years has been almost unmanageable, right? Yeah. So back to my original point about the pie just not being that large anymore. So for us, we're looking at technology every chance we get. When we first opened up here 11 years ago, we got a point of sale system that's no longer around, but at the time they were the only ones using tablets. So we didn't have to migrate anybody. We could just be like, okay, this is the restaurant, this is how it works, this is what we're doing. You're going to walk up to tables, and immediately our staff could cover 50% more tables because of this handheld technology. They weren't writing down notes and then going and waiting in line at one of 2 stations to bombard the kitchen with all these orders. And so the kitchen ran smoother, the bar ran smoother. It was like, hey, how's it going? You guys want a beer? Boom, send. Like, you want chips and salsa? Boom, send. Let me talk to you a little bit more about what we're all about. And so you got servers that are covering 50% more capacity, which means their tips are 50% greater, their take-home is 50% greater. We control labor a little bit better that way, and then you've got a guest experience that's so much better because they're not running away to get back to a computer. Right. So that was 11 years ago. It's pretty much standard procedure in most restaurants today. We do all of our tortillas by hand. We've got a machine coming in this week that will roll and cut the tortillas, and then same way we do right now. The only difference is instead of them coming out and us putting them on a flat top by hand, they'll actually run through an oven. So what's great about that is it helps out with our kitchen labor. That Susanna, who usually makes tortillas, we can now allocate her to more prep and assembly as we get into our busier months. But more importantly than that, instead of having 8 hours in the morning from like 8 a.m. till anywhere from 2 to 4 when she walks out of here, those tortillas, nobody's really making tortillas fresh in-house, is our experience, at least around here. But we want to see how we can do it better, right? Like, we're doing it on the daily, and then anybody who has a tortilla at 9 o'clock at night, chances are it was made around 2 o'clock that afternoon, which is still blowing the doors off of anything you'd order off a truck.
Right.
But now we have a machine coming in that will allow us to just keep feeding in our fresh masa that we mill up every morning, and put a ball of masa in, it rolls, cuts out 20, 40, 100 tortillas in a couple minutes. So the goal is that nobody should have a tortilla that wasn't made within the hour as we go into this spring. So getting the quality up there while figuring out ways to lower our labor. And obviously, we started off this conversation, like, our people are the bane of this whole establishment. And we're not looking to replace them with machines, but we're trying to figure out how to operate more efficiently, courtesy of whatever tech is out there. It's tough, man. Like in 11 years, our server minimum wage has doubled. Like, slap that. I mean, I don't know entry-level positions out there, but like, could you imagine somebody making $40,000 a year 11 years ago is now making 80? Like, that's a big number for a company to bite off, no matter what your industry is, you know? So yeah, this place for me has always been my office, my second home, my conduit to the community. This is where I get to interact with close to 2,000 guests a week. It's like, this is perfect for me the way it is right now. I have no desire to want to put a second location in Denver or do anything like that. And like I said, the scalability would come with the Ruthie's concept because it was built from day one for that.
For scale, yeah.
Deliberately didn't get that involved in the operations because I don't want to be in 2 spots at once. I don't want to be in 3 or 4 spots at once. So we've been toying around with a couple concepts of canning our margaritas and doing stuff at a local level. We're not trying. Last thing we ever want is to have a product sitting on a shelf in New York City, but
right.
If there's a way to reach the greater Boulder community and do some mail order to our fans that are out of state, like, that's something that I would enjoy. I started cooking dog food for my dog 9 months ago, and he's
really
160 pounds. So we're
he eats good food. Huh?
He dines. He does not eat well. He dines. White tablecloth, lit candle 3 times a day. But so we've toyed around with stuff like that. Like, could we do a
this is the
dog
healthiest freak. Even your dogs are.
Right?
I saw Dana pulled out some stuff earlier that she got out of the fridge and fresh. You know, I feel so. Oh man.
Yeah. So I love everything about this place the way it is. There's obviously concerns about the way the town's developing and how long before our landlord has to tear down a 1-story building in a town where the property tax is so high that they need multiple stories. And
oh, yeah.
So that day will come some point, but at this point, I'm really honestly just enjoying the people that we're surrounding ourselves with. And as I told my staff, I was like, this opportunity that presented itself in January is good for all of us. You know, it's giving us the freedom to do what we now want to do without having to feel guilty. Like I said, you can't pick up and order a machine of that size without having to run it by people. So just we're a little more nimble today, a little more agile. Yeah.
Speaking of property values here, I mean, how do you live I mean, if you're working in a restaurant,
it's a challenge.
Can you even live in Boulder anymore? Do you have to live outside of Boulder? I mean,
yes and yes. It just depends on what your lifestyle is.
Yeah.
And for our staff, they do well enough that if they want to have roommates and live in Boulder proper, that's something that's still manageable, although a lot of them would prefer to have a little more space or less roommates, and they're going to the outskirts of town. One of our servers was able to buy a house a year or 2 ago now through one of the programs in town and stuff. So it's like there is opportunity here, but it's not what it used to be, man. I mean, I don't think you can find a bedroom for under $1,000. Like, even if you're sharing like a 4-bedroom house with people, it's still. My understanding is that the rental rate for a bedroom is somewhere between $1,000 to $1,500 a head, no matter what you're doing here in town. Even with like 5 roommates in a 5-bedroom house. So, yeah, it's.
Do you help your staff learn? I don't know, just like financial acumen and.
You know, it's something.
Do y'all have a retirement, like a simple IRA or something
like that? No, we do health insurance and stuff like that. I will say that when COVID hit, we told everybody, "Hey, we've got you, man. We're going to take care of you." And we got through the first couple months, and then that summer, I was like, "Hey, I thought this would be over by now. It's 4th of July, and we're not even close to the flattening of the curve," as they used to say. And so for us, we did have a moment where I was like, "Hey guys, we've gotten you this far. there's a pretty good chance that there might come a moment where we need to shut down for a few months just to weather this storm. I have no idea what the future has in store. I have no idea how the community is going to react, if we're going to have the same support we had in March come this winter. And
right.
So I told them, I was like, you're all making really good money this summer. Make sure you can afford 3 months on your own if need be. And they were all great, and to the best of my knowledge, we're able to put it like, for an industry that loves to live paycheck to paycheck, because it's all about the lifestyle, and that's great. And that's part of the lure for this kind of operation. So we have had people that have gotten much more serious about their finances. I think the last couple of years was great in that regard, that it put things in perspective for people. And I have a buddy who is a real estate broker, and we've talked about bringing him in to give a quick little clinic and say, hey, just because you're not in the position today doesn't mean you can't be in the position tomorrow to purchase your first home. And this is how it works, and this is what you can be doing to a simple thing, so much as just setting aside a few bucks, per month. So, but it is challenging, and nobody wants to walk into a restaurant and be served by somebody who, when you ask them where they want to go when they're off work, they say, oh, well, I can't afford to live in this town. I live 2 towns away, so that's where I go out when I get home. Like, that's not at all what Boulder wants, and I think the town's doing their best to try and figure it out, but at the end of the day, it's a simple supply-demand, right? Like, it's too popular.
You have a very rigid city limit that I understand, like, doesn't move, and so it is a supply-demand, and then when you had free money for the last 5 years and people are going in and buying up, I mean, it's property values are
through the roof.
Through the freaking roof. This is well, I'll tell you what, man. I want to wrap this up because I want to eat some of your tacos.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you.
This has been so awesome, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate you coming back here. And when you reached out saying you were going to be in town, I was so stoked to be able to sit down and share what we do here and share it with anybody who's willing to get this far along in the listening process. Man. But, man, I will say, like, we talked about technology and stuff, and I don't think you guys give yourself enough credit for how much you simplify our lives on a little schedule fly plug right there for you. But no, it's a big deal, man. And you don't understand. When you feel overwhelmed, I sit down, I journal what my day looks like so I can reevaluate and say, at what point can I make my life easier? How can I get back an hour of a Monday or 2 hours of a Wednesday? And your product is one of the things that really makes a difference in how we operate here. So I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit. You're more entwined in this industry than you want to admit to at the moment. Oh man,
well, I appreciate that. We'll take the plug. I mean, we're to this day, 2023. There's like 50 to 100,000 restaurants and hospitality businesses out there that are on Excel, pencil and paper. I mean, my daughter is a host. She just started a job a couple weeks ago. I was like, what scheduling software you use? She's like, you don't have one. I was like, well, how are you getting your schedule? She's like, well, here. And she shows me an email with a screenshot of a spreadsheet.
Yeah, I was there,
attached. Man. Like, that's it.
I would screenshot that. Yeah.
Yeah, and and I always tell people, like, hey, if that works, like, just keep doing that. Like, the less things but if you get to a point where things start to break down or communicate, like, she's already saying, like, people don't show up for shifts, and then they have, like, the scramble, and I'm like, well, so, but it's just amazing to me. There's so many that still don't have, any kind of a software. So we're, we got like 6,000 customers right now. I'd love to get to 10. I think it'd be awesome if we could get to 10,000 customers.
I see that happening.
So,
but no, it's nice to have somebody who isn't just a tech guy, or like your involvement and your care for this community is pretty impressive for somebody who really is. Your product is software, but the way you guys run your business is very much hospitality. So I just wanted to say thanks for that, man.
Appreciate that. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated with companies that serve the hospitality industry. That there's a disconnect. That if you're serving an industry whose lifeblood is providing good hospitality, which is going above and beyond to make people feel good about doing business with you.
Yeah.
And making them feel welcome. how can you serve that industry and not provide like great customer service? You know what I mean? Like it's. But I mean, so I look at it, I'm like, look, if nobody else can figure that out, great. Like that just gives us an advantage because it's uncommon, and to me, it's like that's like just common sense. But
restaurant
whatever.
supply companies that close at 4 p.m. Like,
I mean,
what breaks before 4 p.m.? Nothing. Nothing. Like. I'm like, you're not in our industry. You're in the supply chain industry. Yeah, but it was like you put the word restaurant on your logo. You better be willing to work with us. So, well, anyway, man, let's get you some tacos.
Let's do it, man.
All right.
Thank you all for listening.
Cheers,
More
guys.
coming soon. See you.
Thanks.